The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Monday, November 6th, 2017. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, I want to thank our patrons, without whom this is not possible. You guys and you all keep the show going. And we really do like to take time to thank you because of how important you are to the show. I'm joined tonight by my friend, Matt Sinkowitz, Professor Matt Sinkowitz. He is the, should I give you your, yeah, I'm so used to giving them your, actually, Matt, you know what? Unfortunately, you're going to have to unmute yourself from your side now. I didn't realize that I couldn't unmute you. There you go. I'm so used to giving your full title.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, we're laid back now. So I don't want to introduce you in your official title, but he is a professor at Boston College. But you know, he's a friend, and we've hung out when I lived in Boston, and glad to have you on the show tonight. How's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, Ben. It's nice to be on. Yeah, no need for the title. I didn't put on a tie. I hope that's all right.
That's okay. I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt, so you're in good company. You're in good company. But it looks like I caught up with you, man. I don't know if you watched last week what happened to my hair. It's an interesting story, but it looks like we're matching on a lot of fronts. I mean, if people didn't see color, we probably could look like brothers almost.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you wouldn't confuse us for each other. But if it was like a description to like a police sketch artist, and they left out one or two things,
right?
We might come out more or less the same here. Yeah.
Right. They say a bald guy, bearded, stocky, all those kind of things. Just leave out the racial complexion, the colors. We'd be good.
Guilty. Yeah, no question.
So it's hard on nights like this where you and I were just hanging out, and most people, it's hard because of what's happening in the background. In Texas, near San Antonio, Texas, where 26 people were killed. And I'm finding out today that of the 26 killed, about 14 were children. Yeah. The youngest, I believe, was 14 months. And then you had 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 14-year-old, just the whole range of people killed by Devin Patrick Kelly, a 26-year-old who from a neighboring town who, I mean, we'll get into the politics of it, obviously, but the reports are indicating that this was a domestic violence. He had an ongoing dispute with his mother-in-law, and his mother-in-law was a member of that church. And so it seems as though he went to either kill the mother-in-law or to cause the mother-in-law so much pain because the mother-in-law wasn't there. And thankfully, she wasn't there. She wasn't one of those that were killed, but so many other people were killed. And there's a lot happening with that story as it still develops. But I mean, we can't start tonight, even with everything else that we want to talk about. I couldn't start tonight without discussing that a little bit. Matt, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, just that it keeps the recurrence is just it's obvious, right? We say it every time. We get outraged. We hit the standard brick wall in terms of on the legal side, there's nothing we can do about it. It fades away, and then it comes back again. It's, I mean, what can we say except it's a terrible tragedy that probably doesn't need to happen.
Yeah, I'm working on it's funny you should say that. Like, so this morning I got this new thing that I like doing, and it's really just like literally a hobby. I'm not really taking it serious, but I'm starting to do more of these political horror stories, kind of like really short snippets. And one of them I'm working on right now, as a result of this morning or yesterday's tragedy, is the fact that no matter what happens, we have the same exact debate. People say the same exact things, and no matter who is killed, we say the same exact things. We on the left, the Democrat side, progressive side, liberal, however you want to label us. It's a broad spectrum, but we say enough with the prayers, enough with the well wishes. And that in and of itself has become as cliche as hearts and prayers and thoughts. And now we're saying, well, enough with, and we just go back and forth, and it doesn't matter who it hurts. We just keep saying the same thing. We're stuck in this this vicious loop. It's almost like a time loop, but every time it happens, it's a brand new set of people, brand new communities that's devastated. But the people who could make a difference, Matt, they're saying the same thing. Oh, we're extending our hearts and minds and our thoughts and prayers. And then we say, oh, shame on you for all, that's all you always say. And ultimately it becomes a dance. Even though we say those things to try to break up the dance, it becomes a part of the dance. Almost like the last time you were on Like It or Not with me, you were saying people who try to challenge Donald Trump and to break free of his reality show almost get sucked into it, and they can't help it. Go for it.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, there is some sense to trying to censure ourselves for giving the same response, right? Even if that response is correct and logical, right? If the response is this is the only country in the world where this happens, there are similar societies that have many parallels, and yet this is not, Canada being sort of the prime example. They've got lots of guns and this doesn't happen, right? We can say this over and over again, right? And it's true over and over again, and it's not getting anywhere. I mean, there's two conclusions you could draw from that, right? One would be that it's hopeless, right? That the system is so entrenched as such, and the other would be maybe we need to try something else, right? Even if it's a desperation pass, right? Even if it's a Hail Mary and it's got a low odds of succeeding, right? We should try other strategies. We should think of different ways. I mean, first to talk about it, and then hopefully to organize around it in some fashion. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's the same thing. The response, the snarky, thanks for the thoughts and prayers response is,
cliche at this point. Yeah, it's correct. Yeah.
Right.
And
it's no more effective. So I agree with you on that front. I wish I had a clever idea as to what to do, but I am somebody who believes in discourse, and this tact goes nowhere. Right, the tact that sort of says, the Republicans are in the pockets of the NRA, and we'll make fun of that and hope that that somehow changes. That's not working. So I would be interested in a different discursive strategy personally.
And that's the thing. What do we actually do? How do we actually change this so that this doesn't? I mean, okay, let me put it in a very dark sense.
Can't get darker, Ben. So go for it.
So then who has to die?
Yeah.
Who has to die for us to finally say we are going to do something about this?
I mean, it's not a congressman getting shot, right? It's so we've crossed a lot of barriers of late, and historically we've crossed them all. I mean, if Newtown didn't do it, you can just list it, right? I mean, and that is really, I don't really want to, but I think it's necessary to talk about the willful and amazing ways in which, not insignificant parts of America can either ignore it or like develop a fantasy, a false world, a set of lies that allows them to ignore it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can see Newtown happen and then have a legitimate legitimate just in the sense of it having some power, a real sort of political movement based around the idea that this was somehow fake.
Yeah.
Right? If Newtown can be dismissed that way, and this will be the same case, no question. The dark response to your dark question is it's hard. It's impossible for me to lay out something which would be more horrific than what we've seen. So I don't know who has to die. I mean, who could it be? Who's left? What
I know
who's left to be assaulted.
Man, you hit that on the head, because and that's when I realized after Newtown, that we'll never do anything about this, and we've accepted this as normal. I mean, of course, there's so many different angles politically that has to be discussed about this, and to everyone who's in the audience, we're going to get to Donna Brazile's article again, because there's been some significant changes over the weekend. Not changes, but there's been some significant updates, particularly a large set of lies that we have to discuss. And Matt, I don't know, I don't want to make you too uncomfortable with it, but I mean, I'm sure you'll, especially from a media perspective, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of interesting things to say about it. So we're going to get to that in a minute, but we have to talk about the politics of this. two things in particular. One is almost a cliche, right? I'm falling into this trope. I'm falling into the exact same thing that we do all the time, and that's note the hypocrisy of Donald Trump, and to see, and not just Donald Trump, but conservatives in general, and how they react so viscerally when the perpetrator of a horrendous act is either a Muslim or a person of color or someone that falls outside of their political worldview or preferred political worldview. And then we see how they react to Las Vegas, where, you know, it was basically silence and, you know, let's not politicize it. And then we saw yesterday where, you know, all Donald Trump did was extend his heartfelt wishes and deepest condolences. And then to one up it, they've actually upped the ante a little bit. And now they're saying this is a mental health crisis, right? So that's the new thing. Paul Ryan brought that out over Las Vegas, but now Donald Trump is bringing it out over without any evidence. He's just saying, you know, that this guy had mental health issues when he didn't. It was just unfortunately, a domestic violence issue. But this is how they respond, right? They excuse away anytime it's not a Muslim, or anytime it's not something that they can categorize as Islamic terrorism. They are very kind, very gentle, very, you know, let's not politicize it. But as soon as it's a person of color, as soon as it's someone, God forbid, they is Muslim or Middle Eastern descent, they don't even have to be a Muslim. They could be a Syrian Christian for that matter. And if their name is Muhammad or Ahmed, just because of the region they come from, then it's going to automatically be, you know, labeled something as terrorism. I mean, that requires extreme vetting. Go for it, man.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, to deny the racism of it seems pretty hard to do, right? I mean, if there's more to it, it's a matter of profit, right? It's a matter of advantage, and it's just a question of what gain is there for somebody like Trump or somebody like Paul Ryan to maybe, you know, suggest that American masculinity, particularly sort of, that including the white America, whatever. It's kind of a stupid construct, but it's one that's in play, right? Including white America has a serious problem dealing with violence, dealing with mental issues. I mean, I wouldn't, of course, anybody of any race who takes such an action, I would like to believe that there is an approach that could have been taken to deal with whatever mental concerns, right? At least ideally, you should try. There is a mental illness issue, certainly, but it's part of a culture, right? It's part of a culture which includes, and in this case, seems awfully concentrated around white American men.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a quick question as a side. As a white man.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever asked you a question as a white man. As a white man.
I don't know if I've ever been, but go for it.
But you know, generally as a white man, how do you deal with the idea that white men particularly with mass shootings, like, you know, actually, let me just cut to the chase. How do you deal with the idea that is just everywhere, right? Pervasive, that white men are the problem and white men are no good and white men are da-da-da. And I'm actually saying this from let's say someone from the alt-right. You know, the alt-right is pushing this idea that, oh, white genocide, white men this, white men are hated, white men are not, you know, are endangered and all this kind of stuff. You know, white men are seen as evil automatically. Do you ever pick up on that? Because what you just said, the words that you just said kind of fall into that trope. And I'm curious, as a white guy, how do you see those ideas?
Well, the first thing is that when it comes to the alt-right, like this little guy I wear in my head is a big issue. So we can talk about Jews and whiteness, but it's relevant to my personal response to the question, which is, of course, the alt-right. You know, I'm the Jewish guy who walks around wearing a skull cap, right? Like it's. So, you know, that's but that said, I mean, you know, typically there's no question, right? I'm seen as a white guy. God, it's a tough question. I mean, when it comes to some of these things, it seems so foreign to my. I mean, I don't come from I don't know if I've ever seen a gun not on a police officer up close, right? Like I've certainly never shot a gun. And that's not exactly what you're asking, but I'm saying that these things are really, really sort of far from my particular culture within it. But so I mean the.
Well, do you want me to get more specific? Or
well, no, I mean, I'll try because it's a good,
Okay.
it's a fine question, and you know, well, as you're careful about on your show, right? We don't have one identity, right?
Exactly.
And I can be in some context, the fact that I'm a Jewish guy is very important, and in others, you know, walking down the street and you know, have the police look at me or whatever, the whiteness might take over, right? Might be so. You know, look, I would. This is my confessional, I guess. While my politics are very much, at least I like to think that the defensiveness of white men is something that I don't like. Right. I mean, certainly there are moments where I sort of you know, have sympathy for some of the burdens that I see. You know, white men being asked to face. That sounds ridiculous, but in terms of oh god, this is so hard to talk about. You know, like when I see Harvey Weinstein, right? Like when I see men abusing their power, and I think, is that being associated with me because of my you know, superficial connection to it? You know, these things don't compare to structural racism in my mind, or things like that. But I do sort of, I guess, feel I put upon is not the right word, but when I hear, you know, when I hear that white masculinity is the problem, yeah, that doesn't feel great, right? That's a tough thing. I mean,
well, that's what made me ask, right? Because you brought that specific thing. Do me a favor and check your text messages real quick. You brought that specific thing up, and so I was curious. And the camera's on me. I wasn't gonna bring that up. I don't know if it matters. But
it's funny.
To your right.
Yeah, I know where it is now.
So anyway, that was one of the reasons I asked the question, is because of how you phrased that, and you phrased it in a way that I completely identify with, right? So there, and the problem actually exists in the Black community too, for sure, right? The Black community, we have a toxic masculinity problem too. And when I hear, I'm not gonna lie, like, I think people who know me, I never even said this, but I'm sure they can believe it, is that when I hear that type of thing about Black men, or Black men are trash, or Black men are dangerous, and I cringe. Right, I cringe, but then I have to look at some of the facts and some of the data, and some of the things they say are true, and some of the things might be over the top, whatever. So I was curious from your perspective, how that strikes you. Not to detract from your bigger point, even though I kind of took us on a long tangent. Circling back, those thoughts. Where were you? I don't know if you can even pick up where you left off, because I took us way off on that.
Back to what? Where are we going back to?
Exactly, right. So I lost myself. So back to the issue here. All right. So the overall question in terms of the problem, right? How this is being cast politically is something that conservatives they're trying to take advantage of, in the sense of, or won't rather take advantage of, similar to how they would if it was Muslim, right? If it was somebody of the Islamic faith. And in this case, you're pointing out that the real core of this issue was almost the hyper masculinity, or the toxic masculinity that's involved, that because this was a domestic violence issue.
Yeah, right. I mean, the profit to be made, right? The scared, the right people don't get scared, right? If you focus on that issue of toxic masculinity, right? And that's, you know, if we look at look at the election in Virginia, right? And how much Gillespie talks about MS-13 or whatever, right? Brings up the things, violence and problems, but you know, why focus so disproportionately, right? Because the right people are scared, right? It either brings out scared people to vote for you, or it suppresses votes in general. Getting up and talking about toxic masculinity, which is absolutely at play in this, right? That would be to address an actual issue, right? That would be somebody it would take a statesman. Right, it would take somebody with an interest in, actually getting at the issue. All right, and brave enough to realize that you might lose some votes. Right, you might lose a lot of votes.
Yeah,
and you know, I mean, we rarely see this, right? We see there who does this. You know, Chris Murphy in Connecticut sort of got the cover of Newtown to do this to a certain extent. He does probably more than others, but it seems crazy that it takes bravery, right? It takes certain bravery to step up and say, clearly, when you have so many cases of younger, mostly white, some middle class or lower middle class men taking similar actions, then we probably have something systematic that we need to address, right?
Yeah.
But that is talking to your, you know, you are bringing into that question. All of a sudden, you're making potentially a painful reference to people's to your voters' children, right?
Yeah.
Your voters' sons, you know, your voters' sons-in-laws, or your voters, right? If you're talking about particularly Republicans in the middle of this country, but all across the country, and so the worst thing you can say about it is that it just seems completely unforeseeable that anybody would get up and make a stateswoman like address saying, screw it, I don't care, I'm going to lose some votes, I have some faith that there are other people out there who will respect this. It's just it added on top of the sort of awful state of affairs is the fact that nobody will touch it.
Matt, you know, and that's what's so sad, man. What's so extremely sad about this is that it's going to require not just one magnanimous person. It's going to require multiple magnanimous people, particularly Republicans, right? Because you know, Democrats would jump on something for gun control. Well, we believe that they would in a heartbeat. But it's going to require so many more people that we're back to where we were at the beginning of this conversation. I just don't think anything will ever change.
I wish I could be more optimistic.
Maybe we should change the subject because it doesn't look promising here, right?
Well, right. I mean, you know, I mean, what's after, you know, I mean, maybe Las Vegas looked so bad that you'd think, but you know, as has been noted, right? How long did we? I don't know who we are. How long was
a couple of weeks, man.
Yeah,
not even like just a handful of weeks that we actually care about. And I mean, I'm sure, and that sounds callous to say, but the news cycle has moved on. The news cycle has gone past that, and we don't even talk about it anymore.
The news cycle has moved on, and the political sort of discourse cycle never even got there. Right. I mean, like I don't remember. I mean, yeah, you get a few speeches here and there, sort of very, you know, sort of perfunctory kind of stuff. But there was no serious movement, right? There was you know, there's a lot of, you know, Kamala Harris reminding us that we haven't been talking about it, right? It's about the best I remember is sort of a few, you know, and it's good. I'm glad that somebody's doing at least that, but it is kind of the least you can do. You know,
it's all it feels like all a game, man. It feels like not a game in the sense that they realize that they're actively playing a game, but it's a game even in a more terrifying sense that they don't realize that they're all actors on a stage and performing, like they're going through these rituals, they're going through the cycles. I'm sure some of them realize that they're just playing a game, but then the rest of them who feel like maybe they're doing something, they don't even, Democrats and all, they don't realize how cyclical this is and how much they're going to say the same exact thing. And I said this on my show, my main show, or my daytime show, because this is my main show. I don't know what the hell that was. It just came out of my mouth. But this is I gotta correct that. But on my afternoon show, check your messages one more time. I said this, and it's terrifying, and it's sad. I don't want to wish this on anybody, but the sad reality of it, and God forbid, I mean, whoever you pray to, if you don't pray at all, I just hope that it never comes down any of our alley. But the reality of it is that the way this is set up, the way it works, the frequency with which it happens, it's very likely that we're going to be playing another level in this game. And I mean, before this year is out, you know, That's the way it's going. And I don't wish that on anybody, but it's the grim reality that we're going to be repeating the same exact tweets, the same exact statements, the same exact performative behaviors. It's all going to happen again before the end of the year. And I'm just, wishing that I could be wrong. I wish I could eat my own words.
Well, I mean, so let's try, right? I mean, should you, let's say you and your progressive
army
cadre, right?
Progressive army.
Yeah, your army, right? Should you be saying this is issue number 1, right? I mean, it's hard, right? Because you got a lot of issue number 1.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So in that way, in that fashion, I'm a part of the problem. I'm a part of the game.
Yeah. I mean, but it's about prioritizing, right? I mean, if you want to do it at an electoral level, right? If you want it, then the best chance, even if it's a tough chance, is to say, look, the number one thing we want out of these candidates is for them to never stop going after the NRA, right? Never stop attacking Republicans on this issue, life or death in a very immediate way. Right, but I totally understand that some of the other things that might get described as social justice issues are also life and death. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And in this current system, it is hard to foresee candidates who are gonna line up across the board on these concerns. And
you're right. Matt, you just depressed me even more. You just like I'm even more depressed than I was when I started the show, because you're right. Because are we going to do the micro things that would make the macro difference? Are we going to do the daily, day in pounding, day in and day out? And to be honest with you, probably not. From me down to from me up to the president of the United States, probably not. I'll let you get the last word on this, and then we're going to shift gears and take some phone calls.
Oh boy. Last word. God.
Unless you don't have it, we could shift gears.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I go back to that last thing. I just, is this a top priority? Right. Because it becomes a top priority for a couple days at a time. And then I think even in the progressive world, even in the liberal world, it ceases to be a top priority. And maybe that's because there are other top priorities, but we should admit that maybe if that's how we feel.
Whew, man, that's a tough one.
It's rough, man.
857-600-0518. Sorry for the to be Debbie Downers, Debbie Wasserman Schultz Downers. But it's a sad state of affairs. We want to know, weigh in on the discussion, give us your feedback. 857-600-0518. We'll read some questions out of the chat rooms to see what you're talking about there. One last thing that we didn't talk about, which is a little more political and a lot more absurd, the alt-right. They really believe that this was a part of the Antifa movement, the Antifa civil wars, the looming civil wars that is coming, Civil War 2.0. They're spreading this propaganda like, they're spreading it. It even reached Fox News, right? Before the Texas shooting on Sunday, Fox News on Friday said that that with a question mark, clearly, will the Civil War begin, the new Civil War 2.0 start on Saturday. And then you have some people who are taking this incident in Texas and saying that this guy who was a former U.S. Air Force, this guy who formerly taught Bible study, was actually a far leftist socialist who, went into the church to kill them because they were Christian. Despite the fact that the Department of Protective Services and our public safety, rather, in Texas said that this had nothing to do with race, this had nothing to do with religion, this had everything to do with domestic violence. Despite that, you have quite a few. And if people don't leave the show now, but after the show, go check on Google and YouTube, you will see at least 25 videos, each with 30,000 plus. The biggest one, I think, had like 300,000 views, discussing how this was the first salvo in the Civil War. And they're really pushing this narrative, Matt.
It's amazing the persistence of fantasy, even in the context of this kind of terror, right? It becomes so difficult to talk about, in part because I have trouble believing that the people sort of pushing it actually believe this. I don't, you know, because people watch it doesn't mean that you know they don't see it, see through it in some way. But we certainly know there's lots of people who don't. And the ability, the sort of ways in which cognitive dissonance gets worked out in this sort of situation is, I mean, we can add it to the list of depressing elements of it, right? You know, this is, you know, basically it only seems to emerge from a world in which, you know, somebody is so convinced that the only danger is this sort of vague Muslim threat or something like this. Right. They see evidence firsthand that no, their own culture can be, you know, completely capable of doing all the things that they were attributing only to these others. And so they find a way to fantasy out of it, right? Find a way to write a script in which their own people who look like them, talk like them, think like them, don't do things like that. And it's amazing that we're capable of doing it. I mean, you always have to check yourself, right? When you start looking for excuses in such a situation, this just, you know, you want to say it's outrageous, nobody can believe it, and then you hear about, you know, people calling up the Newtown parents and you know, demanding that they show evidence of their dead children. It's real, right? It's yeah, it's just amazing that people are able to squirm into these positions.
So you've actually hit on multiple levels of this, right? And I think you've encapsulated all of the angles that I wanted to talk about on this before we move on to the DNC. Number one is that I don't think the people who are pushing this actually believe it. I think they understand the value of it. I think they understand the financial value of it, and so they're willing to fuel the flames of a second civil war based just solely on their own personal gain, namely Alex Jones. He's one of the main people who pushed this. But the problem is that not only is he making money off of it, but his audience is so large. I mean, we're talking about millions of people who watch and listen to this fool every day who are consuming this. And the terrifying part about this is the second thing that you talked about is that people are willing to contort themselves into all types of positions to dispel with any possibility, ever having to grapple with any possibility that somebody like them committed a crime.
Yeah.
Right. They go for it. Go ahead.
Well, as the first part, you're right. I'm fairly convinced that the Alex Jones of the world are just profiting off of it, right? And to a certain extent we're complicit, right? Now you have to talk about it, right? Because it's interesting to discuss. But you know, even if almost all of those people are suspicious enough of it that they're not going to make it the key to their worldview, a very low yield out of such a big number of viewers gets you in a really dangerous place.
Exactly, Matt. And that's the next thing, is that even out of millions of people, even if 100 of them act out on this, because the FBI last week reported that you have far right groups who are spreading, and not just far right groups, but just conservatives are spreading material online on how to make weapons, how to make homemade weapons, how to make explosives. Right? They are actually preparing for a second civil war, and what this creates is it creates a hysteria. So even if nobody actually attacks them, right, they are so worked up and riled up by their own propaganda, like they're literally preparing to fight their own shadow. But as a result, they're going to run into a situation that end up hurting somebody, killing somebody. And that potentially is going to further us down the road towards an actual conflict in the future, somewhere in a distant future. But it's their own hysteria that is driving them to do things like we saw in Charlottesville, where Heather Heyer was killed by a white supremacist.
Yeah, no, it even if it doesn't in the immediate result in anything specific, it certainly raises up tensions, right? Once people prepare for these things, they start seeing the things that will allow them to take action, right? And you know it works, right? I mean, low yields, we wouldn't have spam if there wasn't a low percentage of people who made terrible decisions, right, and believe ridiculous things, right? It's sort of the same economics of it, right? If you've got millions of people, only takes a very small percentage to get you enough to start building up a really big problem. Yeah.
Right. Let's take this first caller. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Mr. Bryce, what's going on?
Hey, Bryce, how's it going? What's on your mind, man?
Well, yeah, I want to kind of piggyback off what you were just saying about that. You know, they've been, you know, pushing this whole Civil War thing, and you know, even when Obama was in office, they were pushing it to the point that they thought that, you know, Obama was part of the caliphate and all that stuff, and they was pushing a lot of stuff on that level. And then once Trump got in, they stopped, and now they're pushing it again because of all the protests that's against Trump administration. So now you have a double-edged sword of that, of a black president. Then you have, you know, people that are protesting against all these issues, and of course, like you just mentioned, the hire got killed. So it's like it's dangerous on all these levels, and then not to mention, you know, the mass shootings that's happening. It's like, you know, the GOP is pretty much owned by the NRA. The Democrats don't have enough spine to really fix the problem enough, and it's like a continuous cycle. And, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the call, Bryce. 857-600-0518. And that's the terrifying thing. It is a perpetual cycle that never seems to end. And now this latest wrinkle in it is that, you know, you really have to consider the organizing ability of these people and their ability to get, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 of their friends to believe the same thing. All of them have their access to guns like never before. Depending on what state they may even have a criminal background and still could get access to guns by virtue of the honor system. They just, you know, check off and say they've never really been convicted of any crime in Texas, and then they can get a gun. And so that becomes a threat to the lives of so many people, whether or not they ever get to their deranged goal of dying victoriously in the second Civil War, whether or not they get to that. They end up hurting us.
Jihadi rhetoric there is I think telling and interesting. It does. There is a fanaticism that you're describing.
Yeah, man. As much as I mean, and this story. I mean, in fairness, we should still be talking about Pulse nightclub, right?
Sure. Yeah.
We should still be talking about so many stories that have happened, and it seems like we're just ever escalating. But for the sake of time, I want to move on to another story that is pretty big over the weekend and important for entirely different reasons, but I think is important. Donna Brazile came out with the article that we talked about last week. She came out on Wednesday night, confirming what I had already covered. Where many of us, right? I mean, I can't take credit for it because I didn't do the investigative journalism. I just reported on it. What we've knew about 2 years ago, the relationship with the DNC and Hillary Clinton Victory Fund and the access to basically almost $350,000 per donor by virtue of relationships she had with about 31 state Democratic parties. And, you know, to me, it was old news, but it created quite a stir. It created quite a stir, and the backlash that Donna Brazile got from Democratic operatives was unbelievable. But before we go to the backlash, let's start with just the story itself. And I want you to feel free. I actually have no idea what angle you're going to come from on this. So I'm not overselling you or underselling you. But I just want to always encourage you, Matt. You're my friend. So anything that you want to say, even if you vehemently disagree with me, please do, because I need more people to disagree with me.
Sure. I'll try. Let's see what I can come up with.
So let's just start at the core story, right? The core story that was in the Politico. People try to deny it. Through a whole bunch of ups and downs over the weekend. We're back at the beginning where her story still kind of holds water. What are your thoughts about her story in terms of the memo, the contract between the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign, the importance of it as it pertains to the primaries, but then the relevance? Do you see any relevance to today, to bringing it out now?
Yeah. So let's see. I mean, in terms of the overall statements, you didn't want to talk about the backlash, but I go straight to the backlash.
Right. Let's go to the backlash in a minute, because I want to talk about the core story for maybe about 5 minutes here.
Right. So the core story. I mean, the only critique. the word the particular word rigging means very little. And that would be the one sort of especially this is a word that basically, I mean, whether or not he began it, right? Donald Trump owns that word at this point. And I would prefer to avoid that particular word. We could find other even nastier ones potentially to describe this situation, but there is something sort of vague about it. In terms of the overall story, I mean, I am, she seems to be coming from a reasonable place so far as I can tell. There's if you are pretending to run a true election of any kind, then the agreement that she has pointed us to regarding Clinton and the DNC is obviously completely inappropriate, right? As she notes, it's not illegal, and to a certain extent, the Democratic Party can do whatever it wants. The issue is lying to us, right? The issue is convincing us that when we go to our polls, when we go to our caucuses, we're actually making the difference in who's going to be the nominee. I don't think they went as far as to cut that out, but they certainly created a situation where, you're the playing field is, it's not just that it's not even, right? It's set up in such a fashion that nobody could trust it. In terms of the timing, I don't. It'd be nice. I mean, I assume you're referring to the election day is around the corner. Is that what you mean by the timing?
Yeah. Well, timing in general. I have a mystery sound. I have a mystery sound that's ringing right now, and I have no idea.
I'll keep. Well, let me just say in terms of the timing. Yeah, I don't. I mean, there's a big gubernatorial election in Virginia right now, obviously, which Democrats would like to win, and that if you believe in liberal values, progressive values, democratic, any not racist, awful lobbyist values, then you should be hoping for a Democratic victory in Virginia. I have trouble believing this is directly going to swing an election like that. There's a lot of transfers on a bus trip to get from Donna Brazile to the Virginia gubernatorial election being shifted. But I mean, if it came out next week, I guess that would be maybe better. It certainly makes Democrats look bad, and they need to look bad, right? The Democratic Party needs to look really bad as a result of this. But I personally don't want it to look bad in such a fashion that gets Gillespie elected in Virginia. I don't think it will. I'm just trying, Ben.
That's why that's honestly, like, that's why we hang out, like, because we're both pretty reasonable, right? You I would say we have a very similar politics. You lean a little bit more towards the establishment than I do, but I'm not far behind you, right? So I think we're both probably could be best described, at least me. I know Max described himself as this. Max, a producer for the show, is institutionalist. We see value in the institutions, in particularly for stability. But I appreciate you, because that's reasonable, right? The Democratic Party does need to look bad as a result of this. That's number one, because it is bad, right? And it's something that we need to address. And with Donna Brazile's, I actually saw Donna Brazile's article as a fig leaf to all of us who knew this was going on, and they were telling us we were crazy. And I saw Donna Brazile saying, listen, we've got to move on. We got to move forward. Not only do we have to move forward, but this actually happened. So let's address it. But then I don't want it to go so far as to put in somebody crazy like tomorrow in Virginia, Ed Gillespie, who is running an entire campaign on maintaining the monuments, the Confederate monuments in Virginia. Like, he's literally saying that's the distinguishing factor between he and was it Frank Ralph Northam. Thank you, Ralph Northam. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I laughed. The idea of running a campaign on not removing monuments is laughable, right? I mean, this is what he's going to do in his 4-year term, is not remove monuments, right? It's like it's so bald-faced, it's so pathetic, right? It's so desperately pathetic. And I think you're right. I am probably I lean more towards the institutionalism than you do. Northam doesn't excite me, and Perriello was much more exciting. There's no question. That said, there's no. You cannot possibly even if in fact this is going to hurt Democrats in a practical way, then that's a problem, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The hurt needs to come as a means of reforming the process moving forward, right? And the sham nature of the primary process, which I think of this, it more or less reveals. I mean, I'm not sure it would have changed the result or not. That doesn't. It's not really important to me, right? Like,
Right.
I cheated, but I was better at the sport than you were anyway, so it doesn't matter. Like, cheating is still a problem. Lying about the rules of the game is a problem.
And don't piss on us and tell us it's raining. Don't insult our intelligence and make it seem like we're crazy. Like, we knew that it was the scales were tipped, right?
Oh, it's never going to be a totally even game, right?
Right.
We know that.
Right. But to tell us, to try to lecture us, particularly the Democratic establishment and those people, really the Hillary Clinton campaign, to try to lecture us and say, oh, nothing was wrong, everything was fine, you're just being ridiculous. That's the insult to injury, right? And that's what causes permanent damage. And I have to repeat this because I think it's worthwhile repeating. Donna Brazile's book, and the fact that Donna Brazile was willing to take it on the chin for a few days, she kind of backtracked on Sunday, but she took it on the chin for a few days in order to put the truth out there, was the biggest moment of reconciliation that we could have had. We could have moved forward. Even if it was a broken unity, it would have been some type of unity. But instead of embracing that, you had, and we'll move to the backlash, you had reporters run stories over the weekend, particularly one in the NBC, that the first run of the article said that Donna Brazile was just wrong because she read the wrong agreement, mutual fundraising agreement, and she read the one for 2015, not the one for 2016, or vice versa. And then only to have them correct the story 12 hours later, but by that time the damage was done, and they went after Donna Brazile like nothing I've seen since the primaries, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not to compare it to the previous story because there is no comparison, but that cognitive dissonance seems to have kicked in again, right? A certain set of the reporting world, which is, just committed to the idea that, the system is sounder than it is. Right. And then it is more impervious. And, they had two choices there. One would be to really embrace the possibility that they were on the wrong side of this for a long time. Right. That they had been reporting that things weren't tilted and when they were. And so there was a choice. Right. It was either to sort of really give a close, careful look to Brazile and decide, that maybe their reporting during the primary was not so great, or to see what they wanted to see, right? Yeah. To see something that looked like a flaw. I mean, my favorite / least favorite part was the comment about Biden and the idea that she was interested at one point in looking at the possibility of replacing Clinton, and that sort of got twisted into her claiming that she could unilaterally replace. And like Donna Brazile doesn't know that she can't unilaterally replace. It's ridiculous. She's been around the block. Like she's like a
50-year veteran. She's like a 50-year veteran of this game, and
there's no way she would make that mistake, right? That is completely ridiculous. She sort of left the little sort of opening, the way that she worded it, that if you wanted to willfully twist it into your own story, and so the story goes there. And that's also the Twitter world, right? That's the sort of snarky, easy response that actually avoids dealing with the question. And again, it's just jamming it back into that sort of fantasy story that has, in this case, I mean, we have to face the reality of the failure of the fantasy, right? He's in the Oval Office right now.
Yeah. One of my longtime listeners, Ryan, in the chat room on YouTube is saying, he said, so actually I want to read it perfectly because it's kind of a little dig at me, but it's worthwhile. He said, primaries, time to relitigate. All right. No, just kidding. But actually, because listen, and let me make it about me for a little bit because, I'm self-absorbed. But one of the reasons I don't it is my big ass name. All of us.
Yeah.
I could have called it anything. I put my name on it. So,
yeah, it's not even the Ben Dixon shit. It's the Benjamin.
It's the Benjamin.
Like the whole thing.
And when I'm in person, do you ever call me Benjamin? Like,
I would never call you Benjamin. I would never say, "Hey, Benjamin." That would sound
just weird. Just weird.
I wouldn't do that. No, I wouldn't do that. Anyway, Benjamin.
So it's quite pretentious. But anyway, to make it about me, here's the deal. Like, if I was willing to play to the desires of a particular audience to hear that they're always right. If I was willing to do that for progressives, I'd have more followers than Jimmy Dore and Tim Black combined. If I was willing to do that for neoliberals or centrists or whoever, I'd be on MSNBC already. And the problem is that my vice is actually my virtue. You know, my strength is my weakness. Is that I refuse, even for my audience, to allow us to play into these tropes of innocence, that we're always right, that we're never wrong, and that it's always someone else's fault, and then contort every single story to make sure that we stay true to that narrative. That is something that happens on the right, and I always wanted to fight that against Fox News and conservatism. So why would we, if we know it's a problem in conservatism and Fox and the right wing, why would we allow it on the left? But not only do we have it on the left, we have it in both factions of the left. We have progressives who can never find anything right to say about the centrists and neoliberals and the Democratic establishment. The DNC is always the devil. And if you carry that line, oh, well, yeah, you can get 100,000 followers, subscribers on YouTube really easy, make a good living. Or if you really aggressive, you can do it for the machine, for the establishment, and then get you a spot on msnbcs.com, you know, their blog, their video blogs. So it's like, if you want to cater to those audiences and always make them feel as though they're never wrong, there's plenty of room and opportunity for you to make a lot of money. And I'm afraid, because of the sheer market value of that we will always find people who are willing to help them along the way with their cognitive dissonance by weaving the dots. Like, I know some of the people who tweeted out about Donna Brazile, Nate Silver from 538, he's smart enough to know that what he tweeted out was wrong. And yet he still did it. And not only him, but so many other people did it. And that lie has become so pervasive that the genie is out of the box, right? We can't get the genie back in.
Yeah, well, you just gave a nice introduction to media studies lecture there. You know, to get it into my line of work, in which I you know, my audience is even more niche than yours.
Make it about you, Matt. Make it about you for the next few minutes.
Yeah. No, but that's what you're describing is just, you know, there are conditions in which creative people, produce their work, right? In which you make your show, in which Nate Silver puts out his tweets, and there are incentives, right? And those incentives are often in contradiction to your ideals. And you know, you work hard to try to shape those in a way that you find tolerable, right? To try to find an incentive structure which allows you to keep your ideals to whatever extent, but we all make sacrifices.
Hey, let me tell you, man, it's getting hard. I'm going to sell out soon. I'm going to tell my audience, people think I've been taking money from George Soros all this time. I haven't gotten a dime from George Soros, but let me tell you, things get hard. Y'all might see me on CNN one of these days because I got to pay the bills. But just know, like somebody said, hang on, I got to read this comment because these comments are great in YouTube tonight. They said, Ben, you should have fooled MSNBC into thinking you're an establishment supporter and then spill the truth live on TV. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe it is too late. Say everybody, I'm marked. I'm already marked.
No, it's probably too late, but it's too late to trick them. It's not too late to fill a role in their debate, right? To be the patsy progressive potentially, who you know, I mean, they need some strife too. I mean, but look, while I understand what you're saying, I guess I have I haven't a lot of optimism tonight, but I have a glimmer. a glimmer of optimism that, like, let's say you did get a job in MSNBC, that while yes, they would pull you in their direction. There's no question about it.
For sure.
I feel like I have a little bit of optimism that talent and will can push back a little bit, and I guess I would believe that would have value. Right. If you were to be on MSNBC and just not completely sell out, right? Not completely give up your ideals, just keep a little bit, right? Again, it goes to that, like, so yeah, the impact, the sort of message you'd be giving would be watered down to a certain extent, but it would be reaching a much bigger audience. And maybe you could take this important institution and drag it a millimeter in the right direction.
Yeah. Just be a little bit, if I could just be a little bit better than Chris Hayes. Like Chris Hayes is the furthest left on MSNBC. So let me go one notch to the further left than Chris Hayes. And, I wouldn't have to sell out too much to pay for my kids' college.
I would call that, I think that, that's the difference between between a progressive and a revolutionary, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
If you're a revolutionary, you would say never. I'm not setting foot anywhere near there. I'm gonna die with the flag wrapped around me or whatever. I think that part of progressivism has to say that look, I'm not going to define progressive. To me, what I understand it as, right, just personally, right, just what I understand it as is the idea that there are institutions that I'm really going to work to pull them. But I am going to acknowledge that they are there and that they matter. I can say I don't like them, and I'm going to yank as hard as I can, but I'm not going to tell them to go buzz off. Right? I'm gonna keep pulling.
I have a caller on the line. I have 3 comments, and then we got to wrap up the show. I'm good. How are you on time?
No, I'm good. Yeah, baby's asleep. No, okay. Nothing to worry about here.
Okay, I gotta read these 3 comments and then we'll take the caller. Morgan Gall on YouTube said, "What about BBC broadcasting for Doctor Who?" I just had to read that because that person touched my heart. Biggest Doctor Who fan of anything. Jim Rivera said they throw me out like Cenk Uygur, Young Turks. I believe that's true, but let me tell you something. Like I can take 20 cents and flip it into 200, right? $200. So, give me the amount of salary and the amount of audience that they gave Cenk for as long as they gave Cenk, or watch me flip it into something bigger and better. Then Nerdy Gamer 000 said, laugh my ass off. Chris Hayes left. Dude is a centrist at best on the global political spectrum. Well, yeah, I mean, let's be fair, right? So everything that we're talking about is on the American political spectrum, right? The conservatives in the UK believe in universal health care in like a single payer system. So by far, we're not talking about the global political spectrum. We're talking about the United States political spectrum. And to be fair to Chris Hayes, in the United States political spectrum, I'm really thinking like who's on mainstream television, who's further left than him. And I really can't think of, and he doesn't even impress me with his leftism, but he's just notably probably furthest left on cable news.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. You didn't say that he was particularly progressive, right? Just that he's the left flank of cable news.
Right.
The cable news is oriented to the right. I think it's fair to say, if only because Fox is the dominant player in it. And then as much as CNN wants to differentiate itself from it, there's always that tendency to look for that big conservative audience, at least to get a piece of it. So much of the cable news word is already leading so far that way. So and he's the left flank of the left flank, which puts him in the center in some sense. I mean, I think that's right. I think that's right.
Agree. Yeah. Let's grab this caller real quick. They've been on hold, and so patient caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben, this is Brianna.
Hey, Brianna, how are you?
I'm good. I just want to say something before I get to the point. I can't hear your guest on the other when I call in.
Oh yeah, that's the audience, the people in the audience can hear them, so that's just you, unfortunately. So I'm sorry. Go for it.
Yeah, okay. All right. So okay, so I guess we're back on Donna Brazile and all that, and I already said we should move on, but it looks like we're never going to pass it.
We can't.
She opened a big can of worms, and I just see Hillary Clinton was just going after, tearing her apart, calling her every name. And I'm like, God damn, I haven't seen this. And this bitch is just a primary.
Yeah.
And the only thing I got to say, when it came to the agreement and it came to, Like Hillary Clinton went all in to get this nomination in Democrat. Like she fought Vivian. See, like it gave her a mass advantage, and we're not going to use it. It gave her a mass advantage over all the other candidates. Like she went after Bernie like no tomorrow. Like she went cutthroat, all this other, she did all this dirty stuff, and I'm like, if I was a Hillary supporter, I'll be upset with her. Like I would have respect for what she's done, but I'd be upset. Okay, you were this vicious, carnivorous. You were stupid. I'm sorry. I didn't use that for a second.
No, it's great.
During the
carnivorous
monster during the primaries. Why were you playing party cake with Donald Trump during the general election?
Absolutely.
Where was this fire during the general election?
Absolutely.
Why were you dragging him through the mud?
Right. Hey,
like,
listen.
where was this?
Listen, I don't mean to cut you off, but we're short on time. But you actually said a mouthful there. That's the truth, right? Hillary Clinton was Machiavellian in the primaries, not in her presentation during the debates, but in how she worked the system. Yeah. And I said last week, this is not so much her fault, right? I try to be fair to everybody. I even said something fair about Donald Trump today. So, if I can say something fair about Donald Trump, I sure as hell can say something fair about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, to be fair to Hillary Clinton, she's working against tremendous institutionalized forces and institutionalized in our mind, institutionalized misogyny in our mind, where we can't look at a woman and see her to be the aggressive, fierce, like she goes onto a stage and she rips the heart out of men on stage. She couldn't get away with that. But I feel as though that's what was missing. If she had done that, if she had been as Machiavellian in the debates with Donald Trump as she was with Bernie Sanders behind the scenes in the DNC, then the world would have seen. I mean, he would have been too embarrassed to win. The people would be too embarrassed to vote for him because she would have just literally emaciated, just like not emaciated, but like just eviscerated him, like disemboweled him in front of everybody. But she didn't do it. And she tried to be this nice grandmotherly figure, and everybody sitting back like, oh, Hillary, we know you queen bee. We know that you probably cussing in your head right now. Say that profanity that's in your head. Say it out loud to Donald Trump. But she didn't do it, and that's part of the reason. That's part of the reason I think that she lost. And to be fair to her, again, it's part of the problem. She poll tested it. And nobody wanted to see a woman out there. Women didn't want to see a woman out there being hyper aggressive. And so she backed off and she couldn't be true to herself.
Yeah. Ambition, right? It's of all of her post-election analysis. If you read what happened and all that, a lot of it I don't really care for, but the observation that people really tend to have a problem with women as they aspire. Right, ambition is what she polled pretty well when she was actually in power, right? But when she's running for office, that seems to have turned off a number of people for misogynistic reasons. I think that's right. I do think it's worth noting that the DNC was a really soft target when you look at the situation, right? So she was Machiavellian, she was manipulative, and
it didn't take much,
but it didn't take a lot, right? It was this strange situation where the DNC was apparently completely broke. That I'm not blaming Obama, but the system that came from the Obama years was a failure one way or another. I don't know whose fault it is exactly. I don't know enough about the inside. I do know that after winning 2 presidential elections, the DNC shouldn't have been broke, and it was. And so
hey, listen, let me say this about Obama, because I'm probably in 2008 to 2000. No, it didn't take long for me to realize who Obama really was, but I'm one of Obama's biggest fans. Right. And I try to exercise with Obama the same thing I ask people to exercise with me and with their fandoms or whoever they support. I actually freaking admired Barack Obama, but you have to be sober about the people who are leading you. You have to be willing to look at them and give a fair, sober estimate of what they did right and what they did wrong. Barack Obama did a lot of things wrong, and in not the least of which is overseeing the demise of the DNC, right? Leaving Debbie Wasserman Schultz in charge. And because she was going to threaten him with sexism and being anti-Semitic. But he should have fired her ass back around 2011, 2012. But he didn't. That was a mistake. The Democratic Party lost over 1,000 seats across the nation. That's Barack Obama's fault. There's a lot of things that he did wrong as president, and he presided over the demise of the Democratic Party, at least the DNC infrastructure, like we've never seen before. And if we can't take a step back and look at people who we admire and be sober about them, then we are genuinely at the core, like when we break it apart, when we deconstruct it down to the very core, we're no better than the people we talk about on Fox News, the Fox News viewers. We're the same as them. If I always have to excuse Bernie Sanders, if I always have to excuse Barack Obama, if I always have to excuse anybody, then we are genuinely at the core of it not better than Fox News viewers who we've laughed at for the last 8 years.
That's right. I like that I called you pretentious for describing yourself as Benjamin before, and then you just compared yourself to Barack Obama at the beginning of that rant. So
did I? No, I didn't. No, I said
I wanted people to give the same approach to Barack Obama as Benjamin.
No. That came out wrong. Thank you for correcting that, because that's not what I meant. I'm asking people to do with whoever it is that they support.
Everybody,
with anybody, not me personally.
I'm just giving you a hard time, but no, it's a super important point, right? And it's the opposite of that cognitive dissonance that we've been talking about all show, right? It's finding that thing that doesn't fit your narrative, right? That you like Obama's, dealing with difficult circumstances or the various things that he accomplished under, pretty considerable duress in many instances, but the performance of down ballot Democrats during his tenure was
atrocious,
right? And so that's not one clean story, right? It's not one clean story about a great man. It's not one clean story about the failure of a man. It's about somebody with strengths and weaknesses. It takes time to explain that story, right? It's tough to do in a tweet, and it can create it can create some of that cognitive dissonance, right? It can create you've got a picture of this guy as amazing, but then there's this weakness, right? The feet of clay that shouldn't be there. And if we don't point to those, then it's pretty bad to say as bad as Fox News, but we're moving in that direction, certainly, if we can't critique people we admire.
But this weekend I did see progressives. I'm sorry, not progressives, but liberals, mainstream Democratic establishment people who are operating exactly like Fox News, who would rather have been lied to. They don't want to go back and look at the correction of NBC News with regard to Donna Brazile. They don't want to go back and say that they were wrong. They don't want to go back and say that their favorite journalist was wrong, because they want to stay in this place where they only receive information that confirms their bias. And in that sense, it really hurt me bad this weekend. They're really no better than, in this case, they're really no better than Fox News viewers.
Yeah, I know, and especially when this is, it is fundamentally a question of honesty and forthrightness, and whether or not that's a virtue that the Democratic establishment is interested in.
Yeah.
Right. I personally, this is probably an unpopular opinion, I personally think that she probably could have won that primary without this nonsense. I don't know that for a fact, but I personally think that's likely the case. Right. But it's completely irrelevant. Right. That has nothing to do with it. It's the story is being told that we were running a democratic election, like a small d democratic election, when we weren't. And sort of covering up dishonesty with dishonesty, right? That's like, I guess that is the Fox News way, right? Is that you take the lie by the Republican politician, and then you spin a new lie to cover that up. I mean,
and Matt, when the followers, when the listeners, when the people who dissected who were able to deconstruct Fox News viewers left and right. I mean, we had a perch momentarily where we could look at the absurdity of Fox News and Fox News viewers and that type of propaganda, and we could laugh them to scorn because we had an intellectual perch, we had a moral superiority, and now all of it is just completely washed away on the altar of protecting Hillary Clinton's honor. The thing that matters least right now is Hillary Clinton's honor, but yet they're still willing. And you know what? Maybe I should correct myself and tell me what you think, and then we'll get out of here. Do you think it's more about protecting Hillary Clinton or more about protecting the fact that they would have to concede that at some point in the last year, they themselves, not Hillary, but they themselves, the individual supporter, was wrong?
I totally think it's the latter. I completely think it's the second part. I think that there's tremendous Hillary Clinton fatigue even amongst those people who spent a lot of time supporting her. That if this did not go right in the face of the reporting of with dozens of people, hundreds of people who were committed to the idea that this thing was more on the up and up than it turns out to have been. Honestly, these revelations are. They seems like they could be taken in stride, right? They don't seem like they don't even seem to besmirch Hillary Clinton that much to me.
It's not a game changer in the sense that it ends. It doesn't destroy Hillary Clinton. All it destroys, Matt. All it destroys is the construct that they created in their mind.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I could stop there. I don't even have to describe this construct.
No, I think that's right. I think it has more than anything to do with not wanting to go and rewrite your understanding of the past 18 months or something like that. Because I don't think it rewrites your understanding of Hillary Clinton. I mean, the idea that she was going to take every advantage she could get. I mean,
didn't surprise anybody.
That doesn't seem like a shock, right? But it's another thing if you've sort of been committed to a narrative. And I mean, maybe there's some protectivism that somehow you sort of perversely think that denying this will give you more moral authority the next time around. It seems like admitting your mistakes is in the long run the way to a better place.
Matt, tell everyone how to get up with you.
Follow me on Twitter if you want, at Media Studied. I've got this tough to spell last name, but you can look it up and find I've got an academia.edu. I've got a book available. I can
hold that thing up for me.
Yeah. The Other Air Force. It's about American foreign policy and media in the Middle East. So it's on Amazon. It's all around. Get me on Twitter at Media Studied. Happy to chat.
Definitely. Everybody follow him. If you follow me, follow him on Twitter at Media Studied. His handle is in the description of the show for tonight. Hey, Matt, thanks for hanging out with me, man. We got to do it again soon.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Looking forward to doing it again.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to try to play this closing music here. My technology is not as advanced as it was when I was in Boston, but I think the conversations are just as good, and we'll see you all next time.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.